Hello and welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Temitope Fagbemi. A deadly attack in Kenya last week left 36 Christians dead in the town of Mandera. As usual, Somalia's Al-Shabaab militants claimed responsibility for the attack, saying they were punishing the Kenyan government for sending troops to Somalia to help combat the militants.
We will not flinch or relent in the war against terrorism in our country and our region. We shall continue to inflict painful casualties on these terrorists until we secure our country and region. Our stability and prosperity depends on a secure neighborhood, and this is our commitment.
Tough words from the Kenya President Uhuru Kenyatta during an address to the nation after the murder of 36 non-Muslims at a quarry in the town of Mandera. Islamist Al-Shabaab militants killed the workers at the quarry, beheading at least 2 of them in revenge for Kenyan military action against the group in neighboring Somalia. Residents say the gunmen crept up on dozens of workers sleeping in tents at about 1 a.m. in the same area near the Somali border, where they hijacked a bus and killed 28 passengers on November the 23rd. As a fallout of the attack, President Kenyatta told the media he had nominated a new interior minister and accepted the resignation of the head of police, both of whom have been criticized for failing to stop a spate of attacks blamed on the Islamist militants.
Inspector General of Police, Mr. David Kimayo, a man who has served this nation with dedication and commitment. Mr. David Kimayo offered to retire, and I have accepted the retirement request. I therefore take this opportunity to thank Mr. David Kimayo for his many years of service to our nation. Further to this, I have today nominated the Honorable Major General Retired Joseph Ngaiseri as the new Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government.
However, Kenyans have grown increasingly critical of President Uhuru Kenyatta for failing to do more to defend the East African nation from the incessant militant attacks which have killed well over 200 people since 2013.
After the attacks, the Kenyan media asked the government to review its security policies as the country now faces, quote, a serious Boko Haram-type problem. To analyze Kenya's security issues, I'm now being joined on the program by a security expert, Dr. Femi Adegbulu. The recent Al-Shabaab attacks, 36 Christians were killed, some were beheaded. What do you make of it?
Well, that's purely a kind of religious war, if you ask me, because a situation where you separate some religious people with certain religious inclination from those you cherish, it simply means that they are fighting a religious war. And that is an essence of Islamic jihad, which is very unfortunate.
Well, if you're saying they're fighting a religious war, the Kenyan media is actually saying that if the government is not careful, that Kenya faces, now I'm quoting now, a serious Boko Haram-type problem. Can you really compare the two?
Well, the Boko Haram insurgent right now has assumed a very strange dimension, which we can't call a religious war anymore. It is a war which to some of us lacks, you know, it lacks sense. It stands logic upside down, because when you say you are a Muslim, for example, you wage war against your fellow Muslim, so that tends to actually give one some other maybe interpretation to what they are doing. But then one can also excuse them by the fact that some of these extremists, they see the moderate and those who do not toe their radical line as people who have compromised the faith. And so they wage war against them, they regard them as infidel too. So if we look at that logic, we will say, well, maybe it is the same thing. But the Boko Haram in Nigeria, their style has assumed a very dangerous dimension, and that they don't even discriminate anybody.
Okay. Now let's go back to the Kenyan Al-Shabaab attacks. The reaction of President Uhuru Kenyatta after the attacks, he came out speaking really tough, and he dismissed two of his security officers almost immediately. One resigned, the other was sacked. We're talking of the Inspector General of Police and the Interior Minister. And he said now Kenya is going to go out in full force to defeat Al-Shabaab terrorists. Let's compare his reaction to what we usually have here in Nigeria when we have such attacks. What do you make of his reaction?
Well, first and foremost, let's see Uhuru Kenyatta walking the talk first. But the first action he has taken is quite commendable. That's what any chief executive would do when his organization is going down the drain or things are just going against the norm. He has done what is quite commendable. Coming back to Nigeria, a lot of things in Nigeria have been politicized, and that's the problem we have here. You see, it takes a very long time and a lot of hue and cry from the populace and the people who matter to make government act.
If I may come in here, I'm aware that the president in Nigeria here has actually dismissed some of his security chiefs, a couple of times over this Boko Haram issue. So, I mean, for you to say some people are still keeping their positions, are you...
Okay,
I'm not sure that's actually very true.
Okay, I think what we should concern ourselves about is not just in dismissing an individual. Since the last dismissal, and you have appointed somebody to take over the one you dismiss, has there been any improvement, or we have worse scenario? So that's the issue. It's not in dismissing somebody. It's in appointing somebody. When you dismiss somebody that you suspect maybe is not efficient enough or maybe is collaborating with enemies, and you appoint somebody you feel that can do the job. Okay. Now, in our situation, have we had that, or we have worse situation now? Since the last person that was changed, I think since the last, the new NSA now, for instance, since he assumed power, what have we been witnessing? The fact is that we've witnessed a worse scenario where the Boko Haram will not only attack and run away, but now seize territory and host their flags. So this is what we've been seeing.
They said they are punishing the Kenyan government for sending their troops to fight them in Somalia. We know that Al-Shabaab is actually based in Somalia. Would you advise the Kenyan government to withdraw its troops from Somalia?
Well, normally the pact that countries sign, a kind of alliance countries go into to help one another in terms of crisis. So if the two countries are signatories to such pact, it becomes very difficult for Kenya to unilaterally act like that. So I wouldn't advise that, because this kind of help is complementary. Okay, you help me, I help you. So if that is what is happening, I don't think it would be wise enough for Uhuru Kenyatta to act on such a situation, pause of the moment. No, he should think of other collaborations between the two countries. No, I don't think it would be very, very mature to dance to the tune just like that.
Now, the Kenyan security forces, they've been very successful in chasing Al-Shabaab, especially away from the capital of Somalia. Yeah. How come they've not been able to prevent Al-Shabaab attacks on their own soil?
Number one, you remember that these insurgents, particularly terrorists, they adopt these guerrilla tactics. They attack and go. They attacked when you are unsuspecting. When they know that you have some vulnerability, they attack you there, they run away. They leave some scars on here and there. Okay, their signature there. Now, that's number one. It's not something you see them and you plan for them, that you will not allow them to come. Okay, so they take their target by surprise. That's number one. Number two, there is something we call insiders' enemies and outsiders' enemies. So when you have insiders' threat collaborating with outsiders, so that's very dangerous. It's not unlikely that what Kenya is experiencing may be that of insiders' threat collaborating with outsiders. So when you have a situation like that, which means the outsiders now will be told when to strike and all the logistics that are necessary to strike successfully, they will know. So you've just been wondering, how come they are doing all these things sporadically? It could be that they have some moles within the system, those who are collaborating internally, which you do not suspect. Is not unlikely at all.
The editorial of the media, after the attacks, they were awash with so many theories. Some of them are saying that Al-Shabaab is not purely Somalia-based now. In some of the editorials, they were saying that it's very possible that Kenyans are now collaborating with Al-Shabaab and that the Al-Shabaab may actually have cells in Kenya. Could that be true?
Exactly. When you have insiders who are sympathetic with outsiders doing the same job, so that's a real problem because your attention will just be focused on the people outside, that you have some people coming to attack you, not knowing that there are people from within who are aiding and abetting. It's just like the situation we have on hand, for instance, when even the president declared that even members of his cabinet, he does not understand. He doesn't know some of them. Okay, if you have a situation like that, it simply means that even all the security meetings you've been having, all things that are supposed to be revealed, only on you to know, okay, will now be revealed firsthand to your enemies, even before you end the meeting. So a situation like that, you have no secret.
So with all the challenges you've mentioned, I mean, there must be a way out of this. This cannot be allowed to continue. What is the way forward?
Sure. The way forward is always good when you have governments that have a political will to act, not a lame duck kind of approach to things. Now, when you have political will to deal decisively with enemy, and that simply means that you don't consider whose us is God. You don't care whether somebody is involved. So that's why the case of Oguche is an insult to common sense, to say you don't find evidence enough.
Now, you're talking about Nigeria now.
In Nigerian situation, for instance, all these things make international community to think we are not serious. They think we are just dissipating energy for nothing. They think that even assisting us is a waste of effort. Because the people you are assisting, even Yoruba have a balance that is a child who is, willing to be carried by his mother, that will be easily carried. So if a mother wants to carry a child and he's doing like, it becomes very difficult for the mother to, you understand? In other words, it shows that we are not even serious with what we are saying. It's one thing for us to say, okay, we want to make sure we deal with Boko Haram, we stamp them out, this thing. When you now see the reality, okay, the body language, and in actuality, you are not really doing anything. So foreign governments that actually understand their onions, who place a lot of value on human life and even money to be spent, who don't just spend money for nothing. So they look at you and say, these people are not serious. These are the people we want to help. And yet, you see all these things going on. People that have been arrested and people have been fingered to be supporting, aiding and abetting terrorism, they are still very much around. You just wonder, what is wrong?